Hello and welcome to Feedback for the week of March 10th of 2010, 3/10/10. There's no meaning there. I'm joined by Patrick Klepek, Matt Kyle, Andrew Pfister, and Robert Manuel, who has come out from under a 60-hour review of Final Fantasy 13.
He hasn't showered the entire time.
We call him the linear
terrible.
man.
What we
keep going
do for all
forward.
of you. So obviously the story from last feedback is still a story because things have happened. We've talked about it all over the website, so we don't need to go through everything again. But sort of what's the top line learning that we got?
Patrick, can you summarize everything for me? I haven't been paying attention. Can you just kind of run through everything again?
Sounds like some of our commentators. So, I mean, the latest things have happened is, like, we saw that the lawsuit was filed. And that the lawsuit essentially makes this all real. It takes it from the realm of hearsay into something tangible, and now we're waiting to see what Activision does next. The last thing that we've, on our side, from our sources, is that the illegal memorandum went around Activision that we managed to get a copy of, and it listed, a series of documents that Activision is looking for internally. And this is very standard. Anytime anyone is sued, they just want to make sure that everyone who could be affected is making sure they're backing up all their information in the case that they need to take that into court.
And it's typically for the discovery process. They also then have to make sure those documents are available to the other side.
Yeah, and so, I mean, in this case, we're talking about insubordination, breach of contract. If they're looking for evidence of that, I mean, in the memorandum, there's things, it's like handwritten notes, it's everything. So they're just making sure, don't throw anything out, don't recycle today.
Yes, if you have a napkin that you had tea with Vince, save the napkin. There might be something there.
So the interesting thing that we saw in there were a couple of them. One was that anything related to discussion of or analysis of Modern Warfare 3, please hold on to that. And so that's a given, regardless of whether Modern Warfare 3 is in production yet. The fact that they're thinking about it is a no-brainer. But it's interesting to see where they're, in relation to where Infinity Ward was in the development process, that they're trying to hold on to their documentation they have. More interesting is probably related directly to, Activision's alleging insubordination and breach of contract is they're looking for documents related to communication with Vince Zampella and Jason West in relation to talking to Electronic Arts. And so the implication there is that, who knows what that means? Is that, official talks, unofficial talks? Do they just have coffee with John Riccatello? It's impossible to know. But clearly they believe that at some point those guys were in discussion with EA on some level. And there's another passage in there looking specifically for if there's any indication or any evidence of wanting to or desire to create another studio. And so just the fact they're looking for those documents gives us an idea of where Activision's counter argument is going to be.
And I guess what we're looking for next, obviously there's the likelihood of a countershoot coming from Activision, I think, is close to 100%. Well, recently they did finally issue some sort of response, which every time I read the response from Activision, I can kind of hear sort of a maternal voice going, look at everything we did for you. We gave you capital, and this is how you treat us. You should have been a doctor.
That's
or something like
you should have developed Modern Warfare 3. That's essentially the same thing. Yeah, they issued a very brief statement that just said they were disappointed with the fact that they actually filed litigation and that, essentially you're wrong. So,
of course they're disappointed. They're hoping they'd get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, some of the contest that isn't just about recouping the royalties that have not been paid out is whether or not there's ownership of the Modern Warfare name and brand to the point where they specified in the complaint that even if they have Modern Warfare, if this is all to be resolved and Vince and Jason got it, that a Call of Duty game made in the post-Vietnam War era is precluded. So my dream of having to see Call of Duty Contemporary Combat has been completely kiboshed if everything goes the direction of Vince and Jason. I mean, Matt, I would assume if they have a strong case on that Modern Warfare thing, that this is going to force a settlement. Just because there's DLC, there's Modern Warfare 3. It sounds like there's a lot of money to be made with those games, and the money needs to be made. It's Activision.
Well, yeah, I mean the legal trick they're using is I don't think they expect this to go to trial at all. Like, no one's going to win this in a legal sense. It's going to be because Modern Warfare as a brand is involved, the judge will probably put what is essentially amounts to a freeze on the use of that before everyone decides who's what is what, and that means that they can't put out a Modern Warfare game. They can't promote it, maybe, and that's going to be a problem in E3 2011 if they want to promote Modern Warfare 3, which means they got to wrap this up in a year, which is really fast in legal terms. So that's probably just going to force a settlement out of them.
I mean, yeah, if you think about Peter Jackson trying to get his money out of New Line for the Lord of the Rings, I mean, I think that was a 4 to 5 year, job, and like to just recently, finally, it's like, okay, we'll make The Hobbit now. We're all good. I think the one interesting thing about Modern Warfare. How valuable do you think it can be independent of Call of Duty preceding it on the cover of a box? I mean, it isn't the sexiest name in the world.
Well,
Call of Duty, it kind of has to play together.
They kind of hoped it would because the initial marketing for Modern Warfare 2 was just Modern Warfare 2. And then it wasn't until shortly, was it in the summer
It was
or
a
in
couple.
the fall?
It was a couple months later
wasn't that
when
far.
Yeah.
we saw the box art, and the
And
box
then
art
it
suddenly
came Call
brought
of
it
Duty.
back, and they were like, yeah, it makes more sense to. So it was like from the makers of Call of Duty in really small font, and then Modern Warfare 2, and instead they kind of went back
At
to the
this
original.
point, the brands might be equal because Modern Warfare was just Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was just so huge, and Modern Warfare 2 was just so huge that people are associating the Modern Warfare now. Maybe not so much the Call of Duty, and the last Call of Duty was World at War, which was back to World War II.
Which is kind of the genius of using the Modern Warfare 2. I wonder if they plan that, because like everyone refers to refer to Modern Warfare as Call of Duty 4, COD 4, COD 4, COD 4, and now everyone calls this one Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah.
I don't hear this one called Call of Duty ever. It's Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is the most prominent name that's there on the
Because
box.
Call of Duty doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
And almost retroactively, I'm mentally referring to the first Call of Duty 4 as Modern Warfare.
For one,
Yeah. Sometimes I've actually called it Call of Duty 4
the
too.
numbering system
Probably because
is
Call of Duty
I'm
4
also
also.
square. Well, obviously, I should point out to our audience, due to GDC, this is taping a little bit earlier than we normally do. So it could be very well that when you start watching this, something huge has happened, and it turns out there's a tentacle monster somewhere inside of Treyarch, and that the whole thing has shifted.
If that happens, we'll overdub the developments over this
Yes,
video.
exactly. And then a tentacle monster took them all away.
I feel like we should do that anyway.
Yeah, I think a redubbed version for our less than thoughtful audience members.
We'll just talk like this for the rest of the show. I can't even talk.
I really love it when they did.
Now, moving away from Infinity Ward and all of that, other things happened this
Yes.
week.
You lie.
Even a game or two came out. But first, Portal, the big surprise hit of what? Is it now 2.5 years ago? Was it-
2007.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2007. Portal 2, I will just point out, we've known it's been in existence since 2008 when it was inadvertently announced on our stage at GDC. Despite the
about
fact that
that.
no one who worked on X-Play actually noticed it happened at the time. Because there were technical issues in the truck, and Morgan and I thought it was just a given fact. It was said so matter-of-factly.
Well, it's funny because people are now reporting that Portal 2 was announced like a couple of weeks ago, but they would launch back to our link from back then.
Yeah, which is a couple of weeks ago, 2 years ago.
And it was like, no, we've known this. We've known this.
Gaming journalism. Oh, so proud. But they've been doing some interesting tricks, the folks at Valve have, by, first off, playing with the ending of the original Portal.
Yeah, this is pretty unprecedented to have, I guess, retconned the ending to a game by just mysteriously issuing a patch and then people having to dig through and find. And that comes on that was the second part of it. They issued a patch a few days earlier that, again, just added one new achievement that was finding these 26 radios hidden throughout the game. And those were just hidden in the level. So you had to play through the game, and then the radios led to like sound files and to links to BBS message boards that they had to like download old software to access, that led to landlines where they had to call and get information. They had to like scan through sound waves for images. I mean, like
So awesome.
There are 4 Morse codes.
Morse
and-
code?
Yeah, was in there as well.
And I mean, it's just so cool that that's the way they led. I mean, I have to admit, that it was kind of disappointing that the game ends up getting announced. Like, you do this cool like alternate reality game, and then it's a magazine cover.
Yeah. Well,
it's fine.
Game Informer's a big magazine, and if you
But
want a
there's
big
still-
reveal.
I mean, but still, there's like
image.
conspiracies going around that, it's more than just Portal 2. Like, people are saying, it has a connection to Half-Life 2
That's-
episode
Well, I
3.
That's definitely my theory.
Yeah, I
is that
like Andrew's theory.
Yeah,
I mean,
because they're playing with the ending of Portal. What I think is going to happen? They announced Portal 2 this holiday. It's coming out this holiday.
Yeah.
I think the ending, the game content ending of Portal 2 is going to announce that there's Half-Life 3, I think they're going to skip episode 3. I think Portal 2 is going to be the bridge between that episode 3 was originally going to be, and then Half-Life 3, hopefully in the spring or summer of next year.
Oh God! I mean, I love
Don't-
the
don't-
theory.
Don't set up such lofty expectations.
It's not
This is Valve we're talking about.
I think one of the things that lends some credence is that we're getting to the point where it would be sensible and not surprising if the Source engine will kind of see its newest iteration. And typically, you would see that level of advancement come with a fully fledged Half-Life game in its wake, and it all makes sense. But of course, it's Valve,
Yeah,
and like
right.
look
Yeah.
at the way they just marketed their game. They're willing to toy with you like
See, I mean, it's been 6 years, and it was
I
6
know.
years.
Oh.
6 years between 1 and 2.
6 years between. Wow, it's been 6 years since 2.
And one thing that hasn't been discovered yet is that in addition to patching Portal, they did issue a vague patch to episode 2, which no one has discovered
no one knows what it's about.
what it is. So that's a
Oh,
whole,
I didn't know about
yeah,
that.
there's a whole game to comb through. So something is in there, and so that does lead.
But they
you know,
haven't said what it is.
Yeah,
Like,
so
you
it's
have no clue.
And you know what? That could be something that
Yeah.
they purposely hidden ridiculously
And maybe it's
well,
only, maybe
so
it's only
that
triggered if the
eventually
gnome gets to the end of the game.
something.
again.
I mean, clearly it's
no,
there.
again.
Maybe it makes the
Never
final
again.
boss battle a little bit easier.
No.
So I don't scream all the time. Oh man, that was.
one more shack to take care of.
I mean, that was just one of those like, oh, this game is great. Oh my God, It was just that was a full day trying to get through that. Maybe I just suck. So there's also some stuff involving Steam on Apple.
Yeah, they released a series of teasers to some game sites and then to a bunch of Apple sites that were essentially taking Valve characters and imagery and putting that into sort of stereotypical Apple marketing ads, like the iPod ads that have like the really
sandwich.
the color with like the really colored backgrounds that had a Team Fortress 2 character. They had Alex running to
That's the
throw,
best one.
throw
That's the
something
best
at
one.
the screen. What's that? It's like
It's
a
the 1984.
1984.
It's
Yeah,
the
the
famous
Orwellian.
Macintosh.
Gordon Freeman in the Apple colors.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he's got the Apple logo
Yeah.
on his chest.
Yeah.
So the speculation is that, based on a couple weeks ago when the Steam client was updated and it had some remnants of references to Mac in there somewhere, that Steam is coming to OS X. In addition to that, the fact that it listed all of their major franchises in the teasing advertisement seems to suggest that they've ported the Source engine to the Mac, which could be like pretty huge for Mac gaming.
Now is this the Source engine, or are we looking at like all the offerings on Steam suddenly being available on Mac?
That's too big.
Yeah.
I mean, that
That's
sounds like
way
you have to
too
go
much.
into the code at
Maybe-
such a deep level.
It
It's
might
just-
be like Valve. I would imagine Valve's library will be Mac compatible now.
Right.
But it sets like a stake in the ground. Like
Yeah.
Valve is supporting it. Our engine is there, and I mean, if that's tied to Portal 2 being a huge jump for the engine, maybe this is their way of saying like you can have it ubiquitous across PC, Mac, Xbox 360, and then kind of like what it was doing with their Rage engine. Like they want to have it across all these different platforms, and with the iPad, the iPhone, and the Mac, like Mac-related gaming is becoming a bigger and bigger thing.
I mean,
Blizzard is no longer alone.
Yes, that's true.
Valve is so remarkable because yes, they have a huge fan base, but they're a very quiet company. They don't make much noise. But then when you kind of look at their reach, especially with Steam, they're like the Archer's Daniel Midland of video games. I mean, they're right there in the center of it. I mean, Steam is such an important element, and I don't know. I mean, I still think Epic is probably a little bit more powerful because they so advance kind of new games being made, but Valve's right there as well.
Well, they have the distribution platform, and like that's really like just finding Mac games is difficult. So having a platform for that where they can be put is really the hugest problem, because you can't sell Mac games in stores. Like
Unless it's an Apple store.
No one's going to carry
Apple Store
them.
and
one's gonna
fries,
go.
that's it.
Yeah, so the idea of there being an actual platform where you can distribute it is really encouraging for Mac development going forward.
It's their platform and their design pedigree that gives them this quiet confidence that they don't need to talk. Their fans are going to talk for them.
Yes, it's just Doug Lombardi with a vague grin.
That's all he needs.
Also, we're going to be going to GDC.
Da-da-da.
Yay! That's why we're
Actually,
in here a little bit
By the
early.
ti- yeah, by the
We're
time
there
you're
right
seeing
now,
this, we're there
actually,
right
aren't
now.
we? What?
Yeah,
We're there.
it's kind of strange. Ooh,
Time
the world
paradox.
folded in on itself. I have to say, GDC. I've always enjoyed it. I think all of us have enjoyed it because there's interesting people giving talks. Some of those talks, especially for television, Matt and Rob can attest to this, don't translate all that well.
I still remember what the inverse kinematics animation lecture I was sent to one day, and I think that was a 05 or 04.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I stayed away.
Is that the one where Miyamoto came on the stage and announced the new Zelda? That's not.
No,
that's not the
that was,
panel. No.
Sure.
That's the E3. So
I was there when Molyneux announced Fable, though. I was the only one who stayed
That's-
late
yeah.
for that. And
No,
I came back telling you all about. I was like, "Oh my God, Molyneux's going to make the greatest game that's ever been." And you're like,
what's it called? Because back then it wasn't called Fable yet.
"It's Project Ego."
That's right. Project Ego, because they still had to kind of, I think, wrangle with Sony to get
Rather
that name
ironic
back.
name in the end, but
Yeah, it's Molyneux. But there actually are going to be a lot of games that are going to be shown, not so much on the floor of the GDC, but at all the hotels in San Francisco that surround the Moscone Center. So, I mean, we're actually going to have quite a bit of stuff going up on the site.
the show has really mutated and evolved to fit what it
Yeah.
needs to be over the years.
Yes, it needs to be something that we can give to our audience. So
Well, I
we're
mean,
like a
and,
vessel.
and you'll notice this year specifically that GDC has sort of outlawed hardware manufacturers from being able to do a keynote where they get to
Yes.
grandstand and announce some sort of platform initiative or announce a game. And we've seen everyone do that in years past, including Nintendo themselves. So that's specifically something they avoided this year. And so now
Sid
we're
Meier.
now we're
Yeah,
now we're
Sid.
getting now it's like more designers. Like you can talk about your new products, but it's not like it shouldn't be about platform advocacy at that point. And so that sort of stuff is what we're starting to see is happening around the
Yes.
show because we're all there anyway. So it's not like that stuff's not going to happen. That stuff is going to
They're
happen.
the marketing
next week.
barnacles on the large whale that is GDC.
It's just not the official program.
Now, yes, we are going to be actually, I believe, streaming live. Sony is doing something big there. We don't know exactly what. We know it's big. I mean, they're definitely drumming up a lot of excitement. I think we're going to hear some announcements there. My gut's there, but it is me streaming live on our website, and it's at
4 p.m. Pacific, I believe.
4 p.m. Pacific, so obviously 7 p.m. Eastern.
You should have
G4TV.com.
done
day.
this. You should have done this in case you're wrong.
Begins at.
The tentacle monster has taken away the Sony press conference.
That's why it was delayed.
So, yeah, definitely people should be checking in on the site. But yes, that Wednesday, be there in spirit with us. That will also be there with all the excitement and hoopla
It's a party.
And
and
tentacles.
lights. So let's move on to the games of the week. That's one of the reasons why we have Matt Kyle here. You just recently reviewed Battlefield Bad Company 2. What, about an eighth of the length of Final Fantasy 13?
Yeah,
He actually finished it 8 times.
yeah.
So
we keep it
In
equal there.
solidarity with Rob. I'll
Also,
play it
hasn't
again for you.
showered.
What was your overall take? I mean, this really is, I think, fundamentally two different games: the single player
Yeah.
and the multiplayer.
I mean, overall, I liked it. I mean, it got a 4. The interesting thing about the single player is that they seem to have taken a lot of lessons from Call of Duty 4, in that it's a more focused and narrower and a little more serious than the first one. Like the first one more had like open areas, you could kind of go wherever you wanted, do whatever you wanted as long as you accomplished your objective. And this one is more like go down this road and kill everything in your path, and go to this next point and then go down that road. It's like it's not nearly as open, but it also is more designed. It more feels like a real place. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like someone took a Battlefield map, plopped it down, and said,
It's
"Okay,
not
play make a
sandboxy.
single player game." Yeah, it's still funny. The characters are still engaging, but like it just felt a little anemic in the end because the AI is not up to par. The AI is willing to blow your cover up, but it doesn't really seem to know what to do with you after that. Like they'll blow the house you're in up, but then they'll like kind of
Yeah.
maybe they hate
didn't expect
houses.
to
They
get
have
this
nothing
far.
against you. It's kind of like those Brink security ads where the woman's alone and the man comes up, kicks the door down, and runs away.
We realize,
I like to
oh,
think
God,
of it
there's
as the
somebody
man
home.
who hates doors. It's nothing to do with wanting to steal it. He's like, I'm going to get that door today. But the multiplayer, I mean, there's been a lot of excitement surrounding the multiplayer ever since some of the demos were released. I know it's like we had a demo of it on our website that drew some absurd amount of traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, how does it hold up on its own, and then, of course, against Modern Warfare 2?
It holds up pretty well. I mean, it's a great multiplayer for what it is. It doesn't give me the Battlefield feel so much with the big open. Like again, it's a more folded in experience. It's based kind of more around giving you like a Modern Warfare-esque experience that isn't Modern Warfare because you've got the destructible buildings, you've got the vehicles, you've got very different objectives and very different gameplay elements. They definitely expanded the experience system and the reward system out. So now it's like individual kits, engineer, recon. Like using each of those successfully gets you bonuses for that kit as you level that up. So there's a whole bunch of different things to do there. It's always giving you something new. The little carrot on the stick, the little reward button in the brain. Obviously the review came out a little bit before we were able to play a lot of it in the wild. Now that it's been released to retail, and I've noticed that Battlefield 1943 had no kill death ratio tracker, and this one does again. So you see people that aren't really playing the game; they're just padding their kill death stats.
Which really doesn't benefit them in any material way.
Well, that's the funny thing. I mean, Abby and I were playing the other night, and we played against a team that was literally all snipers. And we destroyed them. I mean, it was like you start with 100
So kind of their
tickets.
strategy backfired.
Yeah, well, it's like it's like you start with 100 tickets and you count down. Whoever gets to 0 first loses. And we had like 54, 60, and they'd had 0. And it was just like guys sitting on hills, and like we die and come back 5 seconds later and keep doing what we were doing. It was like a nuisance more than a competition. And I just don't know what they're doing. It's a strange phenomenon that like everybody loves the snipers. Everybody loves, I killed 15 guys and I only died once. Yeah, because we don't care. Like, we're trying to win the match.
I saw that Jarhead movie. It definitely didn't sell me on ever wanting to be a sniper.
No.
Because he was trying to make the case that it was really boring. And trust me, enduring that movie, yes, it was damn boring. But it sounds like that with the destructible environments, it at least like the pacing of the matches changes quite dramatically because you really just can't stay in one place for all that long.
No, and also early. It's interesting in the sense that, especially with the rush matches where you have to blow up or defend the what used to be gold crates, and now I guess they're just like objective crate things. Like it could start in a big warehouse, and then after a couple of tank battles, the warehouse is gone, and it's just like this crate out in the middle of this open area, and that's a very different thing to attack and defend than something that's in a building. And so even in the same match, you will not be able to successfully use the same tactics or the same, just the same teamwork to get this done. It never becomes monotonous. It's a really smart way to use that. It's a really smart way to use that gameplay element, the destructible buildings.
All right, well, Matt, thank you so much for the review of Bat Company 2. Obviously, that's up on our website. I think there's a video review up on our website. If you need the same opinion cut up into various slices,
Don't worry, we
yes,
have you covered.
yes, it's the Mufaletta of Bad Company reviews on the G4TV.com website. Let's turn over to about as different a game as we could get to from a first-person shooter.
Destructible environments?
It's like
I thought Bad Company was turn-based.
So, Final Fantasy 13.
Yes.
Hey, how long has this been in development?
Way too long.
I mean, 12
it's-
took forever to come out.
Since I was still in college.
Yeah,
this is
13's been in development like what 4 or 5
for
years.
4 or
at
5.
least
It
4
started
years.
as a PS2 game, so...
But I think the first time we saw it was before the PS3 came out, but being tied directly
Yes.
to the power of the PS3.
And everyone's like, "Oh my God, is that real time? There's no way that's real time." And now we're just like, it doesn't look as good as God of War 3.
So, Rob,
Yes.
how does it stack up?
It's so incredibly different for Square Enix to really just sort of like come out and sort of toss away so many things that have made so many of their games sort of popular. So it's very linear, very straightforward, very much about team versus like having just like doing your own thing. It's not about grinding anymore. It's about just moving forward. It's a very streamlined game. It's almost like there's been a lot of debates and talk about like what is the modern RPG, what is the JRPG going to do now. Like a lot of people are trying to move to like a Western RPG, and this seems to be like their sort of answer to it. Like instead of having turn-based but not quite having real time, it's this active time battle system where you are constantly not only having to wait for this bar to fill up, but you're also shifting your strategy as you're going along. Are you going all out defensive? Are you going offensive? Are you healing? Are you hitting them with magic? Are you debuffing? Are you doing a combination of like 20 different things as you're coming along? And depending on how the game is going, you can flip through these constantly rapid style. And if someone was to watch this, they would have no clue what you're doing. But it just makes sense
I can
after
attest to that.
20
I watched him play. I have no idea what the hell is happening.
after 25 hours, which seems to be the golden number for so many of the reviews that I've seen so far. After 25 hours, you can really get into the game, but you have
See,
to
you know what
get
makes that
25 hours.
Didn't you have a similar quote for Dragon Age?
Yeah, I was
Alistair?
told that Dragon Age gets good about 32 hours in. And
25
to me,
hours.
that's not good
No,
enough.
it's not. It's such
But why does it get good at 25?
because they are trying
Pitch me on this 20, throwing away
what-
a whole day of my life.
they
a
are
whole
trying
day of
to
my
teach
life.
you like basically this it's no longer like attack, spell, heal, things like that. You are literally going in there with different strategies. You are going in there thinking, okay, I'm going against like one big guy. This is the strategy I'm going in with versus, okay, I got like 25 guys coming at me. If I don't do something in the first 2 seconds, I'm dead. Literally, it is like they are teaching you how to use like 2 people. They're teaching you how to use 3 people. They're teaching you how to use your debuff versus your heals, having to use attack.
25 hours.
And you
Well, but
feel
also-
that they-
also
they
you
pace
point
it
out-
I'm not
correctly?
mentally challenged.
The problem is like the pacing of it is very fast. Like they move you through the whole thing. Like there is no going back. There's no like hitting this monster a second time. There's none of that. Like you are just going down the chute. of
How is
monsters.
it compared to Final Fantasy X? Because that was kind of along one path too.
I think this is much faster. And it's also like the meat of the story, the interaction between all the characters happens within these 25 hours. After the 25 hours, they sort of put in a little story. They sort of like, okay, this is what you need to do. Much less story, far fewer cutscenes.
And it's a hub world. It sounds like that's when you kind of get to what we kind of now think of an RPG where, okay, now it's an open area. I go find someone, take a mission, go off, have an adventure.
Even a little less hub worldy. It's a much bigger, broader area, but you can actually go back and forth within the area. The thing that they do once you get into Grand Pulse, which is what happens when you hit hour 25, is that you are going to find monsters that you have no way to fight. Basically, you're going to get into battles that you're going to lose, and there's just no way around it. No matter what you do, you're just going to lose. And the only way to do it is to go forward, gain some experience, play some things, go through some quests, and then they're going to let you come all the way back, play it, get some stuff that you need in order to tackle these monsters. Like huge battles, like they will kill you with one shot.
I still want to know more about like the story. We know no spoilers, but
Right.
like I want to know more about the story structure because there's kind of 2 different ways to do a JRPG. There's like the Suikoden way where it's like more structured like a novel, and the Final Fantasy VII and onward way, which is more like structured like an anime series. Which one is this one?
It's a bit more like a novel where, going back to the 25-hour mark, you're going to be in groups, and those groups are sort of pitting people in your group that don't necessarily like each other or need something from the other person. So, for example, the main character, Lightning, her sister is engaged to one of the other characters, Snow, and she doesn't like Snow. She thinks Snow's a hoodlum, he's no good. She would rather be just without Snow. There's another kid, Hope. He's like the whiny, gray-haired kid that he's just cowering the whole time. But
These like their gang names or something?
just about.
And then there's a 4th kid named Schmaltz. He shows up as
Do
well.
we switch to the Weather Channel? Like,
Cloud, squall, lightning.
That's what they like. And so what happens is that sort of Lightning takes some, like, shows, Hope, like, you have the courage, you can do whatever you want to do. And he's like, oh, great, now I have the courage to go.
Just my name will now be Kurt.
naturally.
No,
Naturally.
it's like, I have the courage now to go kill Snow. And she's like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm going to go kill Snow because I blame him for my mother's death.
Yeah, this sounds like an anime. This sounds like an anime. I'm not buying this
What
novel
it
stuff.
sounds like is even though it's been so long since another Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
this isn't the Final Fantasy to kind of bring in a new audience. That you pretty much have to sort of know what you're in for for this game to appeal to you.
You have to dedicate yourself the 25 hours to get into this game in order to get.
Patrick, we'll just like feedback. We'll just overdub our own story into it.
When did RPGs become less about adventure and more about therapy?
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, but this goes back even to the original Kingdom Hearts, which I know many people are a fan of. I just couldn't kind of get my head wrapped around it. I love the Disney parts, But then that kid, what's his name with the shoes?
Sora.
Sora.
The kid.
I mean,
with the shoes.
within
shoes.
25
Big Mickey
minutes,
shoes.
he was suddenly having an existential crisis. And I'm like, you're hanging out with Mickey Mouse, okay? I mean, this is kind of weird. Enjoy it, for God's sake. I mean, look, the guy's name is Goofy.
We went to Disneyland a couple weeks ago, and I had a meltdown, just a personal existential crisis. I'm like, why am I here? What's going on?
I just don't.
Is this a dream?
These things used to be about the quests you'd solve in each village used to be about like, well, what's this impediment to our grand quest to save the world?
Right.
And now it's more about helping your party
It
members
feels
work
like
through their emotional problems.
This is like
and I don't.
the Nomura effect. Like it seems like ever since he sort of grabbed creative control of Square Enix, essentially,
I think it goes back further than that.
But I mean,
Goes to 7.
just everything. Yeah, I mean, it's post 7, but especially him now that his fingers are in everything that goes on at that company.
Buckles and therapy.
So much of it is just so and I loved 10, so I don't know
Good
what's
nightclubs.
Buckles and therapy. We're gonna meet there after this, right?
Yeah.
we're going for drinks afterwards.
Chris Gore's already there.
They have great appletini.
I don't know what's changed. Like, cause I used to like this stuff, but now it just irritates me to the point of like, I want to play that. I want to play 13, but it's just like,
But it's a lot.
have they learned anything? Like, I just
totally agree with
it's
that.
a lot.
And could you just give me Skies of Arcadia or something? Just something where the main characters are
Is there an airship?
enjoying it.
airship?
There are airships, but there's no like proper like flying around.
Is there a
There.
Sid?
I mean, cause
Yes,
like
there
why?
is that you actually have to fight them.
Kind of ride a chocobo?
Yes.
Why
They're
can't I have the Japanese like polish? Like I look at Fallout 3, and that is not a game that I go, that game is polished. Like it's not right. I don't. I accept that game for it being like really, really rough around the edges and just sort of dealing with the fact that sometimes you run into a pothole and you're stuck there because you forgot to save. But Square like Japanese development like is just so incredible. Like it has such an interesting aesthetic to it. I just feel like. I don't know if it's because it's like the really, really long development times that, they started this 5 years ago and there was a different sensibility back then, or they just don't want to change. But I don't need them to make first-person, open-ended adventure Final Fantasy. That's not what I want. I just feel like they need to go look at Capcom. Like, look at what Capcom has taken
Yes.
from the lessons of Western development and where games have gone and apply that to the games. While still, if you play Lost Planet and Dead Rising, those are Japanese games. Like, those feel like Japanese
but
games.
they don't have that alienating quality I think you're talking
Exactly.
about. I mean, this goes back to our discussion last week about Other M and how all of us were just kind of apoplectic after seeing the Young and Naive video. It's like this need for infantilism that seems to be in a lot of the RPGs, which I just think that as we're getting older, it is, I mean, as I've learned by being on a comment section and just going to certain places, I'm not an adolescent anymore, and being in the company of adolescents is sometimes a little bit challenging because
You put it so
you tend to
diplomatically. I love it.
they tend to be self-centered. I was just listening to NPR. They're talking about how the frontal lobe has not developed, and so you don't understand consequences of actions.
The connection between the frontal
and
lobe.
that, for whatever reason, a lot of the Final Fantasy games just really are emblematic of that mindset, and not in a kind of, boy, weren't we silly when we were young kind of way, but yeah, this is the right way to behave. And it's just
Teen-
They used to have
teen
the
drama.
You used to have the excuse, back in the 7 days, where like, well, it's because mostly teenagers play these RPGs, and like, I don't think that holds any. Now, though, those teenagers are in their 30s, and we're all kind of like, well, I don't really need to come of age anymore. I'd like to have a story about
So
someone
then,
who
does that
Look at
make it
something
our
like
problem? Is that our problem?
maybe it
then?
is.
Well, but look at something like Akira, the manga. I mean, that is a wonderfully rich and I think mature world that, that like the creative energy is out there, but it's just somehow it's not seen as, viable.
No, it's just a matter of like, it doesn't have to be like that. Like,
Yeah.
Like, why can't you give us a story that's more Final Fantasy by way of Heavy Rain?
Yeah.
Just try it. Just try it.
Try it.
Jason.
You might like it.
Jason.
Not that. Not that.
Press X to Sephiroth. That's what I'm after.
I would love for that to be like
eggs.
kind of a special summons. Jason. The more comes.
Eris.
Well,
Monster.
anyway,
I just
Rob,
wouldn't rotate the stick
thank you
long
so
enough
much.
to revive her.
Rob, your review. I think everybody needs to read Rob's review. This man played the game, and you could have stopped earlier, but you wanted to
No.
see everything this game had to offer, and you put 60 hours of your life
honestly,
into it.
it could have been there. There's so much more. There's replayability, but it's 60 hours as much as I could do before getting in.
But you had a deadline.
Yeah, deadline.
You had a deadline. So everyone go check that out. I want to get to a reader question from our reader, Secret Asian. Secret
Man.
Asian. Secret Asian man. That'll be bleeped.
Yeah. Keep going.
Here we go. Usually when there is a massive issue that everyone is looking at, I tend to look the other way and talk about something completely different to change the subject.
Referring to Infinity Ward and Activision nonsense.
Oh, I was thinking Sarah Palin. For example, this week, Portal got a mysterious update involving hidden radios and secret codes. My question to you is, do you guys think cryptic advertising methods work? Are these puzzles supposed to show how much detail and intelligence is going into the making of the game, or are they just rewards for hardcore fans of the game series to see a minuscule amount of information that in the long run will be worthless? Or are these puzzles just a waste of time?
All of the above.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, I think
Yes.
if the Infinity Ward thing hadn't gone down this week, Portal 2 would be all anyone is talking about.
Yeah.
course.
No, I
And
I
it still
think you're
was
right.
like it was the counter to the Infinity Ward stuff, and it's twofold. Like you get the cryptic stuff that gets me excited, that gets the message boards excited.
Yeah.
But then you put it on the cover Game Informer, and it gets everyone else excited, and everyone's happy.
I mean, I think a lot of this goes back to was it I Heart Bees?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I Love Bees. I mean, that was a genius piece of viral marketing that I don't think we've really seen anything replicate that since. But yeah, for that, you want to rally that hardcore fan base. And, you know, as we've talked about before on the show, you know, the hardcore don't necessarily want to share with everybody else. And so you want to sort of serve them something that's really going to stay within their community, get them excited.
But ironically, with stuff like this, they do share information among themselves. They do share. They try to decode everything.
But they don't so much want to share it with the sort of more
With the
casual
casual,
fan.
right.
No.
Right.
But
This
still,
is a way to keep Portal and Valve kind of, still special to the hardcore while still selling millions upon millions of copies of it.
Yeah, but you could still like pepper in like the information. Like a lot of the stuff for the Portal, like I would go through the message boards and it was like, oh, this is what we found here, this is what we found here, and like certain images would come up and you would sort of play along with them without having to go into all the trouble of like decoding yourself, learning a new computer language, going to the message boards, so on and so forth.
But I think the other thing is, I should have brought this up a little bit earlier, with regard to changing the ending of Portal, the idea that you can have games that are suddenly fluid, that like what you played once may not be the game that, you know, that someone's going to quietly come in and change your game in the middle of the night. You know, it's like swapping out a parent
Well,
or
then you're
something
going to
like
have to
that.
explain, like, why is it okay when Valve does it, not when George Lucas does it?
Valve is clever.
Yeah.
because this was good.
Yeah,
Gordon Freeman shot first.
if Valve didn't, you know, turn Gladys into a pussy at the end of this I think that's a distinction that I would draw. At the same time, I don't think that if you have a viral campaign, it will work or it will impress the hardcore. That,
Yeah,
you know,
just,
it does
just
have to be
because
done
Valve
right.
did it doesn't mean it's going to work every
that
time.
pre-existing fervor has to exist, and
that-
Valve has built that up years
Yeah, I
and
mean,
years and years.
Valve has built that to the point that I laughed earlier today when I put up the story that GameStop accidentally spoiled the news that Portal 2 is going to have multiplayer co-op, and there was someone in our comments that said, "Man, it's so boring that GameStop got to review that feature. It's so much more fun when Valve does it." And that speaks to why like they would rather wait longer and have Valve do it in an interesting way than to just read a description off of GameStop.com that gives you the information right now instead of having to go buy a magazine or wait for a PR campaign to go through.
But
They
you
would
can make
rather
your PR campaign part of the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Half
Now-
the work's already done.
I would have to say, but doesn't this logic explain why people thought that Infinity Ward had a bunch of security people show up to obfuscate the release of Battlefield Bad Company 2? That this idea of
I don't wanna-
face anything.
I don't want to
marketing.
think about that again.
You wouldn't play around with like employees. You wouldn't mess around like that.
No. But I mean, this idea that something that looks innocuous is actually
Yeah,
part of a larger
that's true.
marketing
But
scheme that we're all.
But I did
part
like
of
that
it.
every time I'd ask, like, well, what possible positive like publicity could come of that? The answer I would always get was, well, what positive publicity was going to come of hiring a bunch of fake Christian protesters to protest Dante's Inferno?
Yeah.
Because EA actually did that.
Yeah.
So on one level, it's like, well, things have just gotten so ridiculous that it's hard to blame people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to see that IMDb entry from one of those protesters. Fake Christian protester at E3 2009.
Number 5.
Well, with that and on Portal, we're going to go back through it to San Francisco to continue coverage of GDC 2010. I do want to thank this panel here again. Patrick Klepek, who's been following the Infinity Award all week long. Matt Kyle, whose Bad Company 2 review is up on the site. Andrew Pfister, who sits in that chair really well.
It's his birthday technically right now, too.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Andrew
birthday.
Pfister.
Thank you.
You're like getting close to me in age, correct?
Yes.
Only if you stop aging. What do you
Yeah.
How does that make any
Why
sense?
hasn't he?
Lost.
Well, sheer willpower, I'm going to stay the way I am.
You'll have to wear a lot of eye makeup.
It's the Polaroid of Dorian Gray, not the picture. We're not going in the opposite directions. And obviously, Rob Manuel, thank you for being here. And obviously, your Final Fantasy 13 review is up on the site.
Yes.
Video accompaniment. Once again, the Mufaletta options of, of
Only
of
takes
video
20
game
hours
reviews.
to read his review.
It's true.
But
Yes.
it gets really good at the
It's
end.
really good towards the end. But you can't skip it.
That I hope we can say the same about this show as well. That's feedback for the week of March 10th. We'll be back here next week. Maybe something with a tentacle monster happened at GDC. Hello there. I'm Adam Sessler, host of X-Play, editor-in-chief at G4TV.com. I talk a lot about video games, and sometimes a camera is in front of me when I'm doing that. We call that Sessler's Soapbox. It takes about 2 minutes of your time, but trust me, you will hear invective and joy and probably a lot of rude things like you've never heard before in the context of video games. I do it for you, so you should check it out. It's up every Tuesday on G4TV.com.